At 17:30 hours on July 17, 1940, Karl Probst sat in his Detroit office staring at a telegram from the United States Army Quartermaster Corps. The message was direct. Could American Bantam Car Company design and deliver a prototype reconnaissance vehicle within 49 days? The specifications were attached: four-wheel drive, three-seat capacity, 275-pound payload, 80-inch wheelbase, vehicle weight not to exceed 300 pounds. The deadline was September 23, 1940. Probst had been a freelance automotive consultant for 2 years since leaving Bantam, where he had been chief engineer. He knew Bantam's capabilities and limitations intimately. He also knew that what the Army was asking was impossible. Designing an entirely new vehicle from scratch normally took 18 months to 2 years. The Army wanted it in 49 days. No automotive engineer in America would accept such a contract. It was professional suicide. But Probst also understood what the telegram really meant. War was coming. Germany had conquered France 6 weeks earlier. Britain was fighting for survival. America would eventually be drawn into the conflict, and when that happened, the military would need reconnaissance vehicles in quantities that existing manufacturers could not supply. Whoever designed the prototype that met Army specifications would receive production contracts worth millions. Probst called Bantam President Frank Fenn and agreed to return as chief engineer for the duration of the project. He had no salary, no contract, just a handshake agreement that he would design the vehicle and Bantam would build it. He started work the next morning with a blank sheet of paper, a slide rule, and 48 days until delivery. What he created in those 48 days would become the most influential military vehicle in history, the vehicle Dwight Eisenhower would call one of the 4 most important weapons of World War II. But on that July evening, Probst had no idea he was about to design an icon. He only knew that the U.S. Army needed a vehicle and American Bantam needed the contract. He would give them both. The story of how the Army decided it needed a lightweight reconnaissance vehicle began with observation of German success in Poland and France. German forces used motorcycles with sidecars and Volkswagen-derived Kübelwagens for reconnaissance, messenger duties, and officer transport. These light vehicles moved quickly across rough terrain, required minimal fuel, and could be repaired with basic tools. American forces had nothing comparable. In June 1940, the Quartermaster Corps issued specifications for a light reconnaissance and command car to replace motorcycles and Dodge trucks then being used. The specifications were demanding four-wheel drive for cross-country mobility, 660-pound payload, initially later increased to 1,275 pounds, short wheelbase for maneuverability, low silhouette for concealment, and maximum weight of 1,300 pounds to allow air transport. The weight requirement was nearly impossible. Contemporary four-wheel drive trucks weighed 3,000 pounds or more. The Army wanted similar capability in a vehicle weighing less than half that. Most automotive engineers considered the specification unachievable, but the Quartermaster Corps sent requests for proposals to 135 American automotive manufacturers anyway. Only 3 companies responded: American Bantam Car Company, Willys Overland Motors, and Ford Motor Company. Bantam was a tiny company in Butler, Pennsylvania, building small economy cars. Willys was struggling financially after the Depression. Ford was the only financially stable respondent, but their engineering department was skeptical about meeting the weight requirement. American Bantam responded first. Company president Frank Fenn recognized that winning this contract could save his failing company. Bantam employed only 300 workers and produced fewer than 3,000 cars annually. But Fenn knew Karl Probst, who had worked for Bantam previously and was one of the most talented automotive engineers in America. If anyone could design the vehicle in 49 days, it was Probst. Karl Probst was 48 years old in July 1940. He had worked in the automotive industry since 1913, designing vehicles for multiple manufacturers. He understood mechanical engineering, weight reduction, and practical design constraints. He also understood manufacturing processes critical for designing a vehicle that could be built quickly in quantity. When Probst agreed to return to Bantam on July 18th, he had 48 days to deliver a complete prototype. He started by analyzing the Army specifications to understand what could be compromised and what could not. The full 300-pound weight limit could not be compromised. The Army was firm. Four-wheel drive could not be compromised. That was essential for cross-country mobility. Three-seat capacity could not be compromised. Driver, commander, and one passenger were minimum. But other specifications could be interpreted flexibly. The Army specified 660-pound payload, but Probst knew that was inadequate for practical use. He designed for 175 pounds, trusting that the Army would accept the increase if the vehicle performed well. The Army specified maximum speed of 50 miles per hour. Probst aimed for 60. The Army wanted simplicity. Probst would give them the simplest design mechanically possible. Probst began with the chassis. He chose a ladder frame design, two parallel steel rails connected by cross members, simple and strong. The wheelbase was fixed at 80 inches by Army specification, short enough for tight maneuverability. The track width was 49 inches, as wide as the 80-inch wheelbase allowed, while keeping overall width under 63 inches. The suspension had to be simple, strong, and light. Probst chose semi-elliptical leaf springs at all four corners, proven technology that required no specialized parts. The springs would be mounted directly to the frame rails with simple shackles, no sophisticated independent suspension, no complex linkages, just leaf springs and shock absorbers. The steering system used a standard steering box with drag link to the front axle. Nothing innovative, nothing complex. Probst was designing for reliability and ease of manufacture, not engineering elegance. Every component had to be readily available or easily manufactured, no custom parts unless absolutely necessary. The four-wheel drive system was critical. Probst chose a transfer case design that split power from the transmission to both front and rear axles. The front axle had to steer while driving, requiring constant velocity joints or universal joints that could operate at angles. Probst selected Resepa constant velocity joints, sophisticated but proven in other applications. The engine was the biggest challenge. The Army specified a four-cylinder engine for fuel economy and simplicity. Available four-cylinder engines ranged from 40 to 50 horsepower, adequate for a more than 300-pound vehicle, but marginal for the heavier vehicle Probst was designing. He selected the Continental four-cylinder engine, producing 45 horsepower, the most powerful four-cylinder available in production. But Probst knew 45 horsepower would be inadequate when the vehicle was loaded. He designed the engine compartment to accommodate larger engines, anticipating that more powerful engines would be available later. This foresight would prove critical when Willys proposed using their more powerful engine in subsequent designs. The transmission was a three-speed manual standard technology. The transfer case provided high and low ranges, giving 6 forward speeds total. Low range would provide torque for climbing steep grades or pulling heavy loads. High range would provide normal road speeds. The design was conventional but effective. The body design was purely functional. Flat panels everywhere to simplify fabrication. No curves, no complex shapes, nothing that required expensive dies or skilled metalworking. A flat hood, flat fenders, flat door panels. The windshield folded down, flat on the hood, to reduce height. The seats were simple metal frames with minimal padding. Probst designed the rear cargo area to accommodate a machine gun mount stretchers for wounded soldiers or cargo depending on mission requirements. The versatility was intentional. The vehicle had to serve multiple roles because the Army could not afford specialized vehicles for every task. Weight reduction was obsessive. Every component was scrutinized. Could it be made lighter? Could it be eliminated entirely? Could it be combined with another component? Probst eliminated everything non-essential, no glove box, no spare tire, well spare, mounted externally. No sound deadening, no creature comforts whatsoever. The result was a vehicle stripped to essentials. Probst completed the design drawings in 2 weeks, an almost incomprehensible achievement, a complete vehicle designed from blank paper in 14 days. The drawings went to Bantam's small engineering department for detailing and specification preparation. Meanwhile, Bantam's purchasing department began ordering components from suppliers. The challenge was that most suppliers required weeks or months to deliver custom parts. Probst designed around standard components wherever possible. stock leaf springs, standard steering components, off-the-shelf transmission. The only truly custom components were the frame rails, body panels, and transfer case. Everything else was standard parts, modified minimally for this application. Bantam's small manufacturing team began building the prototype on September 3, 1940. They had 20 days to assemble a complete vehicle from components arriving daily. The team worked 16-hour days, 7 days per week. Parts were fitted, adjusted, welded, bolted, and tested as they arrived. There was no time for proper engineering trials or testing. The vehicle had to work on the first attempt. On September 21, 1940, 2 days before the Army deadline, the prototype was complete. Test driver Bill Champ took it for a test drive around Butler, Pennsylvania. The vehicle ran. The four-wheel drive worked. The transmission shifted properly. The steering was responsive. The suspension handled rough roads adequately. There were dozens of minor problems, but nothing that prevented operation. On September 23, 1940, at 0730 hours, Frank Fenn and Karl Probst drove the prototype Bantam BRC Bantam reconnaissance car from Butler, Pennsylvania to Camp Holabird in Maryland, 230 miles. The drive took 9 hours, including stops for photographs. The vehicle ran faultlessly. They arrived at Camp Holabird at 1630 hours exactly on deadline. Army testing began immediately. The BRC exceeded every specification except weight. Final weight was 840 pounds, 540 pounds over specification. But the Quartermaster Corps accepted the overweight condition because the vehicle's performance was exceptional. It climbed 60% grades that stopped conventional trucks. It forded streams that would swamp motorcycles. It carried loads that would break motorcycles with sidecars. But the Army had a problem. American Bantam was too small to produce the quantities needed. If war came, the Army would need tens of thousands of reconnaissance vehicles. Bantam could produce perhaps 1,000 vehicles annually with their existing facilities. The Army needed a solution that involved larger manufacturers. The solution was controversial and to Bantam devastating. The Army invited Willys Overland and Ford Motor Company to submit their own prototypes based on the same specifications. Willys delivered their quad prototype in November 1940. Ford delivered their Pygmy prototype in December 1940. All three prototypes underwent comparative testing through early 1941. The Willys quad was heavier than the Bantam, but had a more powerful engine, the 60-horsepower Willys Go Devil 4-cylinder. The additional power made the heavier vehicle perform better than the Bantam on steep grades and with heavy loads. The Ford Pygmy was similar to the Bantam in weight and performance, but had inferior four-wheel drive system. The Army evaluated all three and concluded that elements of each design were superior. Bantam had the best overall design. Willys had the best engine. Ford had the best manufacturing capability. The Army's solution was to combine the best features, use Probst's Bantam chassis and body design with the Willys engine and award production contracts to all three companies. This decision destroyed American Bantam commercially. The company received orders for 2,675 vehicles, a fraction of total production. Willys received orders for 16,000 vehicles, initially eventually producing $368,000. Ford received orders for 15,000 vehicles, eventually producing $280,000. Bantam's contribution to the design was acknowledged, but not compensated. Probst received no royalties, no recognition beyond internal Army documents, no financial reward for creating the design that Willys and Ford would profit from. The standardized design that emerged from the three prototypes was designated the Willys MB and Ford GPW. The vehicles were nearly identical, using Probst's basic design with the Willys engine. Willys referred to their vehicle as the Jeep, a name derived from the military designation GP General Purpose, or possibly from the Eugene the Jeep character in Popeye cartoons. The name stuck. Production began in earnest in 1941. By December 1941, when America entered the war, over 20,000 Jeeps had been produced. Production accelerated dramatically through 1942-1945. Peak production reached 500 vehicles per day from multiple factories. By war's end, 648,000 Jeeps had been produced, making it one of the most produced military vehicles in history. The Jeep, proved itself in every theater. In North Africa, jeeps carried long-range desert group patrols hundreds of miles behind German lines. In Europe, jeeps served as reconnaissance vehicles, command cars, ambulances, and weapon carriers. In the Pacific, jeeps operated in jungle conditions where their lightweight allowed crossing temporary bridges and navigating muddy trails. In Russia, 52,000 jeeps were supplied under Lend-Lease and proved more reliable than Soviet vehicles. The versatility that Probst designed into the vehicle manifested in ways he never anticipated. Jeeps were modified to carry stretchers, radio equipment, recoilless rifles, 50-caliber machine guns, and even bazookas. They towed artillery, hauled supplies, transported commanders, and served in virtually every support role the military required. The Jeep became ubiquitous, the one vehicle that appeared in every photograph of every campaign. General George Patton called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. General Dwight Eisenhower listed it among the 4 most important weapons that won World War II alongside the C-47 transport, the 212-ton truck, and the bulldozer. All 4 were logistics platforms, not weapons, reflecting Eisenhower's understanding that modern war was won by logistics. But Karl Probst received no recognition for his achievement during the war. The Army credited Willys and Ford as manufacturers but did not publicize Probst's design work. Willys Overland promoted their Jeep as a Willys design, mentioning neither Bantam nor Probst. The public believed Willys had invented the Jeep. Probst's contribution was forgotten. After the war, Probst returned to consulting work. He never worked for Bantam again. The company went bankrupt in 1941 after receiving only small Jeep contracts. He never received royalties for the Jeep design, despite it being used in 648,000 vehicles. He was not bitter publicly, but friends reported that he felt the Army and Willys had stolen his design. The truth about Probst's role emerged slowly through historical research. In 1960, automotive historian Jim Gilmore published an article documenting Probst's contribution based on interviews and Army documents. In 1975, the Society of Automotive Engineers recognized Probst's achievement. In 1991, automobile historian Patrick Foster published detailed research confirming that Probst designed the original Bantam BRC that became the template for the Willys MB. Probst lived to see some recognition. He died in 1963 at age 71, having spent 50 years in automotive engineering. He designed other vehicles during his career, but the Jeep was his masterpiece, the vehicle that demonstrated what could be achieved when engineering talent met desperate necessity and impossible deadlines. The Jeep's post-war legacy extended far beyond military use. Willys Overland began producing civilian Jeeps in 1945, initially for agricultural use, but soon for general transportation. The civilian CJ2A Jeep was nearly identical to the military MB, selling for $190. Farmers, ranchers, construction workers, and anyone needing rugged transportation bought Jeeps by the thousands. The Jeep spawned an entire category of vehicles, the sport utility vehicle. Land Rover was directly inspired by the Jeep and launched in 1948 as Britain's civilian four-wheel drive vehicle. Toyota Land Cruiser followed in 1951. International Harvester Scout launched in 1961. Ford Bronco and Chevrolet Blazer came in the 1960s. Every modern SUV traces its lineage to Probst's 1940 design. The military Jeep continued serving in Korea, Vietnam, and other conflicts through the 1980s. The M151 MU-TT replaced the MB in 1960 but was based on the same concept, lightweight four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle. The current Humvee, despite being larger and heavier, follows design principles. Probst established four-wheel drive, high ground clearance, simple mechanical systems, extreme reliability. Today, approximately 150,000 World War II Jeeps survive worldwide. Many are maintained in running condition by collectors and military vehicle enthusiasts. Restoration is relatively simple because the design was straightforward and parts are readily available through reproduction manufacturers. The simplicity that Probst designed for wartime manufacturing makes modern restoration practical. Driving a World War II Jeep today reveals what made the vehicle special. The steering is direct with no power assist. The clutch is heavy. The transmission is notchy, the ride is harsh, the top speed is barely 60 miles per hour. Comfort is non-existent, but the vehicle goes anywhere, climbs anything, and requires minimal maintenance. The design priorities that Probst established, capability over comfort, simplicity over sophistication, reliability over refinement, remain evident 80 years later. The Jeep brand became one of the most valuable automotive brands globally. Willys Overland was purchased by Kaiser in 1953. Kaiser Jeep was purchased by American Motors in 1970. AMC was purchased by Chrysler in 1987. Chrysler was purchased by Fiat in 2009, forming Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. Through all these ownership changes, the Jeep brand retained value because of its World War II heritage. Modern Jeeps bear little mechanical resemblance to Probst's 1940 design. They have sophisticated suspensions, powerful engines, advanced four-wheel drive systems, and luxury features, but they retain design elements that connect them to the original removable doors and top fold-down windshield on some models and the distinctive 7-slot grille that appeared on the military MB. The grille design itself has an interesting history. The original Bantam BRC had a simple horizontal slot grille. Willys redesigned the grille with 9 vertical slots for the MB. Ford's version had 7 slots due to patent concerns. Post-war Jeeps adopted the 7-slot grille, which became the iconic Jeep identifier. Probst did not design the 7-slot grille, but his vehicle design made it possible. Probst's achievement was designing a complete vehicle in 48 days that met extremely demanding specifications and could be manufactured in quantity with 1940s technology. The compressed timeline forced elegant simplicity. Complex solutions take time to develop. Simple solutions can be designed quickly if the engineer understands fundamentals thoroughly. Probst understood weight distribution, structural loading, mechanical efficiency, and manufacturing constraints at a level that allowed him to design without extensive testing or iteration. The comparison to modern automotive development is striking. Today, designing a new vehicle takes 4 to 5 years from concept to production. Engineers use computer-aided design, finite element analysis, crash simulations, and extensive prototype testing. Probst had a slide rule drafting table and experience. The fact that his 48-day design became the template for 648,000 production vehicles suggests that modern development processes, while thorough, may not be as essential as assumed. The military's role in the Jeep story is complex. The Army deserves credit for defining specifications that, while demanding, were achievable with proper engineering. The 49-day deadline forced rapid development that might not have occurred under normal timelines, but the Army also failed to protect Probst's intellectual property, allowing Willys and Ford to profit from his design without compensation. Whether Probst should have received royalties or licensing fees is debatable. He was employed by Bantam when he designed the BRC. So Bantam arguably owned the design. But Bantam was forced to share the design with competitors who had larger manufacturing capacity. The situation was unprecedented in American automotive history and revealed gaps in intellectual property protection during military procurement. The ethical question remains unresolved. Did the urgency of preparing for war justify taking Probst's design and giving it to competitors? Or should Bantam and Probst have received compensation reflecting their contribution? The Army argued that national security required multiple manufacturers. Bantam and Probst argued that their intellectual property was appropriated without compensation. Both positions had merit. Probst never publicly complained. He gave occasional interviews to automotive historians, but expressed no bitterness. He seemed to take satisfaction from knowing that his design had contributed to Allied victory. Whether that satisfaction compensated for lost financial rewards is unknowable. But his silence on the subject suggests either contentment with his achievement or acceptance that fighting the Army and Willys would be futile. The Jeep's influence on American culture extended beyond transportation. The vehicle became a symbol of American ingenuity, adaptability, and determination. It represented the American genius for practical design, for creating tools that worked rather than sophisticated systems that impressed. The Jeep was not elegant, it was effective. That distinction defined American engineering philosophy during World War II. Photographers loved the Jeep because it was photogenic in its utilitarianism. The flat surfaces, simple lines, and purposeful appearance made great images. Thousands of wartime photographs featured jeeps, often with soldiers making the vehicle synonymous with the American military experience. Post-war movies and television shows reinforced this connection, ensuring that generations born after 1945 recognized the Jeep as an icon of World War II. On that July evening in 1940, when Karl Probst read the telegram asking if he could design a vehicle in 49 days, he could not have imagined the legacy he was about to create. He was a 48-year-old engineer trying to help a failing car company win a military contract. He designed a vehicle to meet Army specifications within an impossible deadline. He succeeded through talent, experience, and determination. That vehicle became the Jeep, the most recognized military vehicle in history, the vehicle that contributed to Allied victory in World War II, the design that spawned an entire category of civilian vehicles, the brand worth billions of dollars. Probst received no financial reward for this achievement. He received limited recognition during his lifetime, but his design endures, still recognizable 85 years after he sketched it on a drafting table in Butler, Pennsylvania. That is Karl Probst's legacy. Not wealth, not fame, but a design so fundamentally sound that it remains relevant 8 decades later. A vehicle that solved the problem it was designed to solve so effectively that it became the template for every similar vehicle that followed. An engineering achievement accomplished under impossible constraints that proved what talented engineers can accomplish when necessity demands excellence and time prohibits complexity. The Jeep was not invented by committee, not designed by a team, not developed through iterative testing. One engineer, 48 days, a slide rule, and a blank sheet of paper. That was how the most iconic military vehicle in history was created. That was Karl Probst's contribution to American victory in World War II. That was the achievement that deserves recognition even if Probst never received the compensation he earned.